everyone, welcome to a very quick episode of Bitcoin is Hard. I'm Brian Harrington, and we're here with Liz Wolfe, who's a staff editor at Reason Magazine. And I want to read one of her tweets and just kick off immediately with this because I absolutely love this. It's astonishing to me that the US government thinks they deserve a cut of my gains when I sell my crypto. Off, losers. Okay, Liz. Out of nowhere, I purposely did not tee this up at all. We just met each other. Tee that up for me. Why that take?
Well, I mean, part of it is just like I like being flippant on the internet and consequences be damned. But I think I'm a libertarian. I'm a libertarian writer. I work for Reason Magazine. I cover a decent amount about not necessarily crypto specifically, but sort of blockchain technology. We're sort of at the very beginning of trying to figure out what these applications are going to look like. I think some people overhype some of the benefits, but then there's also a lot of people who are huge naysayers of this and don't really see some of the potential that blockchain technology has to be this really liberatory and disruptive technology. So I'm kind of interested in parsing some of the boundaries of that. And at least from a very first principles level, I mean, I think the tax burden is far too heavy as is. We have property taxes, we have income taxes, capital gains tax, sin taxes, state and local taxes. I mean, I lived in New York City for a while. I had to pay a tax to the city of New York for the privilege of being a New Yorker. It is absurd to me. And I'm pretty horrified on a very, very fundamental level by their ability to sort of arbitrarily decide what cut of my hard-earned money they want to take. So I'm also pretty compelled by the argument that taxing income from capital gains basically reduces savings and investment incentives. And the double taxation component especially is probably the most odious to me. This idea that, this is my after-tax money. I already paid an income tax to the federal government on my earnings, and now I want to put it in my, Coinbase account, in my wallet. And for whatever reason, when I sell it, when I go to transact it, that's a big problem, and they want to take a huge cut of that. This also happens when I transact real estate. And even there, you're taxed at a different rate based off of your specific circumstance. And it just feels very much like potentially something that can really disincentivize people from investing in these types of things.
Early that you said, I am one of these self-acclaimed overhypers. I'm a Bitcoin, I am a Bitcoin overhyper. And what I love is preparing to talk to you today, I scanned your episode with Stephen Kent and his Rightly show on YouTube. And I actually just met him out here in Orange County. And what I love about kind of just his take on politics, like your take on politics, and just kind of where Reason Magazine fits and just kind of this whole narrative, just everything that's happening in the United States right now. I love so much of it. And what I'm passionate about is kind of helping be right at the intersection of that overhype with the practicality of how Bitcoin is moving the needle today and solving issues for today. And that's why our whole show is about kind of how regular people can just use Bitcoin financial products more and use them better. And a big thing we do at Choice is we help people get physical Bitcoin into self-directed Roth IRAs so they never have to pay on them. So they never have to pay. And then in addition to that, I talk a lot about the circular economy and how Bitcoin is building effectively a parallel financial system. In Bitcoin, we have transitionary checking accounts, transitionary savings accounts, transitionary investment accounts that speak USD and Bitcoin. And I guess does it sound too out there that we could have one of these moments where society does kind of just switch over to Bitcoin, instead of fiat money? And I'm sure you've heard that around, and what's kind of your reaction to that? Does that fall into the overhyping category, or are you seeing the parallel financial system, being built?
To me, that falls into the overhyping category, not because I believe the technology is in any way impotent or deficient, but because I place so much faith in central planners and government bureaucrats' ability to totally screw things up. We see this happening in so many areas. I was just yesterday writing about Bernie Sanders' Senate floor speech, talking about how billionaires shouldn't be allowed to go to space. And, the US government is the only thing that really ought to be doing space exploration. And it's for the American people to determine, but not for billionaires to decide. And to me, that was very viscerally frustrating, because if you look at sort of charting the course of commercial air travel and how, over the decades, it's gotten so much safer and so much cheaper and so much more efficient, to the point where people who live in rural Ohio can take multiple flights a year lower income or middle income people are able to do that. That was not the case 40 or 50 years ago. And so it's sort of applied to that realm. That's sort of one of the things that I think about with like, why are we attempting to stymie innovation in the field of, commercial space travel? And especially thinking like, NASA's scientific developments really, really created a whole bunch of spin off technologies that we use today in everyday life. People often point to like Tang or like other like random food products. And that's sort of an apocryphal version of that. But there are like legitimately tons and tons of technologies that we're not even aware of that we've incorporated into everyday life that are the result of NASA scientists' achievements. I think this exact same thing will happen with Musk and Bezos with Blue Origin and with SpaceX. And it's really frustrating to me to hear Bernie Sanders wagging his finger on the Senate floor, talking about how we need to kneecap that. And so that's sort of the thing that I'm applying when I consider Bitcoin's potential. And I also think, I mean, looking at the Biden administration and sort of what they've done with a few different appointments, I'm thinking about like currency comptroller and some of the SEC movement on this. I'm beginning to get a little bit worried that crypto has almost gotten so much attention that now some people are pretty interested in giving us all a hard time. It is worth noting that I think Cynthia Loomis, who represents Wyoming, I believe,
Yep.
she's interested in leading the way within Congress and basically saying, hey, we might not be approaching this in a brilliant way, guys. Like, let's not just be afraid of this technology. Let's pay a little bit more attention to some of its liberatory potential.
Mm-hmm. So I used to work on political campaigns, and I have friends that are very much in the realm of just the editing that you do and just everything. And I appreciate the work a ton. And I think there's a very middle ground that we're getting to with Reason covering like Nick Carter and Alex Gladstein stuff more and more in the series that Reason put out about the cypherpunks and kind of everything that built up to Bitcoin and how Bitcoin was like an actual computer science, step forward for humanity and kind of how it created digital scarcity. I think we're on the cusp of a really awesome breakthrough of kind of how, like, crypto nerds themselves and kind of like you doing the like high level intellectual work of like holding the bureaucracy accountable is going to really like merge really well, because I think we both, it seems like, I would assume, have a very also high esteem for the regular person and the ability for the regular person to always like that's like a common thing. And I think when that esteem for the common person combined with just how technologically like Swiss Army knife like Bitcoin itself is kind of is going to create like a really interesting future where honestly like the social contract is rewritten like in favor of the individual.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of like self-ownership. This is like one of the most fundamental underpinnings of how I think about libertarianism. And I think it's important to give dignity and respect to all individuals. On that note of like the work that Reason TV has been doing on this front, I absolutely recommend their most recent video on the environmental case against Bitcoin and sort of debunking some of the myths that we see circulated. This is something I'm really worried about becoming a more oft recited, sort of widely repeated talking point, because it is so flawed. The science that they're using, the things that Elizabeth Warren is trotting out to justify this, are not based in reality. And so I'm really proud of my colleagues for spending some time debunking that. But I'm worried because that narrative, it's easy for stuff like that to really catch on, and for people who don't really know what they're talking about to sort of seize control of it.
One narrative that I think about Bitcoin on a lot is that in the way that kind of like cannabis just like slow grinded its way to acceptance and just slow grinded to acceptance, I would say that Bitcoin already is like, I kind of will take the other side of thinking that Bitcoin already is like too big to fail. Like it's on the balance sheets of Fortune 500 companies. Like it's legal tender in El Salvador. Like McDonald's and Starbucks know how to turn on Bitcoin Lightning Network in El Salvador. As soon as their CFOs see that they're not paying 3.5% to Visa and MasterCard anymore at those stores, there's now a very, very real Fortune 500 incentive to turn that on and stop paying that 3.5% at all their other stores.
Is it Dubai that's also experimenting with this?
Perhaps. I don't know. I'm not as up to speed on that.
I'm pretty sure somewhere in the United Arab Emirates is also sort of creating a sort of special economic zone where this type of thing will be allowed. And so again, like what you're talking about, if like McDonald's has sort of piloted this in El Salvador, and you transfer that over to Dubai, okay, that's a successful experiment. And then you see Can we transfer it over to London? What about New York? Stuff like that.
What are like the hesitancies and kind of the questions that regular people have that you think would bolster their confidence in the ability for Bitcoin to kind of put a larger dent in the bureaucracy?
I mean, I think a lot of people just have trepidation about things that are unknown to them. I think a lot of normal people have maybe heard of Bitcoin and heard of crypto, but they sort of consider it something to be something that's really the province of people with a lot of technical knowledge, or, only really accessible for those who bought super early many years ago and not really a reasonable thing to buy now. I think for a lot of people, they don't even understand how the blockchain works, and they don't understand that blockchain and crypto are not synonymous, but blockchain technology is what crypto relies on, and that there are also so many other different uses for it. I worry that we're sort of replicating that same mistake when it comes to NFTs, where I wonder whether normal people are going to think of them as like these overhyped digital art pieces, as opposed to understanding the underpinning technology and how it's all about reproducibility and authenticity and verifying it in a really unique way. And that's something where, yes, it has art world implications, but it has so many other implications beyond that. So, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a technically dense concept, and I really do think that hinders some people's ability to understand it. But also, people are just afraid of the unknown, right? Like things that are hard to grapple with, that seem like they're going to challenge the sort of government stronghold on something. Like, I think it's very, very hard to envision a future where, we've done away with fiat currency for many people. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't try. That doesn't mean it's not an exciting thing to envision. And that doesn't mean that there's not all kinds of liberatory potential that can really be unlocked in other ways using the same underlying technology.
I super appreciate you just coming on, like messaging this week. I really do love your tweets. Thank you for the work that you and Reason Magazine are doing. And I'm just want people to know, like we're here, and there's lots of Bitcoiners around on the internet. So call up your neighborhood friendly Bitcoiner and like keep diving in is what I would encourage. Perfect. Well, thanks everyone.
Hey all, this is Brian. You can reach me on Twitter at Brain Harrington. Shoot me a DM with any feedback from today's episode. This has been a Choice App production. Bitcoin is becoming centric to personal finance, and we want to help you learn how to better engage with Bitcoin financial services. None of this is financial advice and is for education and entertainment only.